Well, there is breaking news in the murders of 4 Idaho college students. Today, a grand jury has indicted the suspect, Bryan Kohberger. NewsNation senior national correspondent Brian Enton has the very latest. Brian?
Yeah, Kelly, this news came in overnight that the grand jury had been having these secret proceedings and has now indicted Bryan Kohberger in the murders of those 4 University of Idaho college students in Moscow, Idaho. You remember we were all waiting for this preliminary hearing that was going to happen in June, where they were going to lay out a lot of new evidence in the case. There was going to be testimony. That will now not be happening because of this indictment. Essentially, what happened is it's like a jury for a trial. They meet behind the scenes. It's done in secret, which sounds shady, but it's not shady at all. That's the typical procedure. It's done totally in secret. The prosecution presented them with evidence, and they made the decision that there was enough evidence there to substantiate the charges and that the case will move forward. It doesn't mean that the grand jury thought that he was guilty. It just means that they believe, based on what the prosecution presented to them, there was enough evidence for the charges to move forward. We are told that now Bryan Kohberger will be in court on Monday to officially be read his charges and the indictment. And at that time, he will have to enter either a plea of guilty or not guilty. The indictment has not officially been unsealed yet. We are expecting that to come sometime in the next couple of hours. Kelly?
All right, Brian, really appreciate that breakdown. Thank you. And joining us now is trial attorney Mercedes Colwin. Mercedes, thank you so much for being here. So any surprise that the grand jury chose to indict, and how will this impact these next steps?
It would have been impossible for these jurors looking for approximately 20,000 pieces of evidence not to indict. It is so critically important, and obviously it's taken very seriously. They're looking they pour through the evidence. It is in secret, just like Brian said, so there isn't any sort of outside influences. Presumably it can happen to this grand jury. And they pour through the evidence, may have heard testimony. We don't know exactly what other evidence besides the 20,000 pieces of evidence gathered by law enforcement that they did actually could have possibly gone through. And then secondly, the one thing that's really critical here is that whole testimony is not before the grand jury. There's actually no one has said that roommate, the surviving roommate, who was subpoenaed by the defense attorneys, saying that she had exculpatory evidence. That was the whole premise behind the thrust of that preliminary hearing. They were subpoenaing that roommate for the preliminary hearing. Now that the grand jury is indicting, no sense that the preliminary hearing will not take place. If there's any exculpatory evidence, that will come before the trial. Presumably, Bryan Kohberger will plead not guilty. Presumably, he's going to plead either not guilty or not even say anything. He's not required to enter a plea. But certainly, any evidence that the defense has that they claim is exculpatory will be shown to the jury at the appropriate time.
All right, well, we'll see how it plays out.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.